Part 13. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 121. Look at the time, it's dinner time. Li Zhe also felt a little hungry. At noon, he just found a small restaurant on the way back to eat a little. However, Li Zhe was too lazy to cook alone and decided to go out to eat. Downstairs is a small commercial street with 5 or 6 small restaurants. Li Zhe went downstairs and prepared to go to one of the restaurants that tasted pretty good. At this time, he suddenly remembered that Xiao Qiao asked him to take care of Bai Wei. Li Zhe didn't know what problems Bai Wei had with her family, but he could tell that she must be very nervous financially. So, he stopped going to the restaurant, took out the keys from his pocket, unlocked the car, and drove straight to school. Driving to the 4th floor of the school, downstairs of the girls' dormitory, Li Zhe took out his mobile phone and called Bai Wei. After waiting for a while, the call was connected. Bai Wei didn't expect Li Zhe to call her, and was a little surprised. Li Zhe, are you looking for me? I'm downstairs in your dormitory, why don't we come down and have a meal together, Li Zhe said directly. Although Li Zhe didn't have much contact with Bai Wei, this girl gave him the feeling that on the surface she was cheerful, generous, and easy to talk to, but in fact she was very sensitive on the inside and would subconsciously keep her distance from others and reject their approach. Don't be polite when talking to this kind of girl. If you are polite, she will reject you politely. Are you downstairs in the dormitory? Bai Wei was even more surprised. But I'm not in the dormitory. I have something to do outside. Let's forget about eating. Where are you now? I'm at the computer city in the city. Computer city? Li Zhe was also a little surprised. Okay, I get it. Just wait for me there and I'll go find you. When Bai Wei heard that Li Zhe was coming, she hurriedly said, No, I'll just take the car back by myself. Come back by car? At this point, the buses from the city to the normal college have stopped. Li Zhe didn't believe that Bai Wei was willing to spend money to take a taxi back. Okay, just wait for me there. I'll be there soon, he said without refusing. After hanging up the phone, Li Zhe turned around and drove towards the city. It took more than an hour by bus, but he drove there in less than 40 minutes, even filling up with gas along the way. When he came to the gate of the computer city, Li Zhe saw Bai Wei standing there slim and graceful. He noticed that the white down jacket she was wearing was a little old and the cuffs were a little rough. Li Zhe, you really don't need to go all the way, Bai Wei said politely as soon as she saw him. Li Zhe smiled at her and said, Let's go eat first. I haven't eaten yet. With that said, he opened the car door for her. I'd better sit in the back seat. Bai Wei hesitated for a moment. Instead of being the co-pilot, she opened the rear door and got in. Li Zhe shook his head inwardly. This girl was a bit wary, but in this way, she was like the driver. After getting in the car, he didn't ask Bai Wei what she wanted to eat, and directly drove her to a hot pot restaurant that tasted pretty good. In winter, the weather is relatively cold today, so it would be nice to have some warm hot pot. After arriving at the hot pot restaurant, Li Zhe didn't ask for a private room, so he found a seat in the lobby. Can you eat spicy food? Li Zhe asked Bai Wei. You can eat some, Bai Wei glanced at him. Then let's order a slightly spicy pot base. Then, Li Zhe ordered some fatty beef, tender mutton, tripe, shrimp paste, enoki mushrooms, lettuce and other dishes. A few minutes later, the waiter quickly served the hot pot, and then the two of them started eating. Seeing that Bai Wei was eating with some restraint, Li Zhe smiled and said to her, Bai Wei, don't be so polite, just eat freely. And don't treat me as my treat, just treat it as Xiao Qiao's treat. Xiao Qiao, Bai Wei was stunned for a moment. She asked you to take care of me. Yes, Li Zhe smiled and nodded. After hearing what Li Zhe said, Bai Wei obviously relaxed a lot. Li Zhe, Actually, you really don't have to do this. It's not that I can't take care of myself. Li Jie smiled and said, you don't have to feel bad. Just accompany me on my errands. You can't wait for Xiao Qiao to ask me, but I said I haven't even visited you once, right? By the way, you came to the computer city to work today, right? Bai Wei said yeah, work to earn some living expenses. Li Jie didn't ask her what kind of job she was doing. The jobs she could find in the computer city were nothing more than selling phone cards and small electronic products. If I don't come, then where will you stay at night? I can only find a small hotel to stay for one night. Then didn't you give half of the money you earned from working for a day to the small hotel? Li Jie shook his head secretly. A night in a small hotel would cost at least 20 or 30 yuan, which was not safe for a beautiful girl like Bai Wei. I can't help it. I haven't found a suitable job yet that also includes accommodation, Bai Wei said with a smile. In fact, for ordinary second-tier college students, part-time jobs are not easy to find. Most of them can only find jobs such as distributing flyers, selling products, and waiting tables. The premise is that your school needs to be in the city, making it easy to travel to and from part-time jobs. However, in schools like Hongchen Normal University that are too remote, students who want to work part-time on weekends have no chance. Of course, it is easy for a beautiful girl like Bai Wei to make money as long as she is willing to do a slightly less formal job. But Bai Wei is obviously not that kind of girl. I can find you a place to live in the city, but I wonder if you are willing, Li Jie thought for a while and said. Where? Bai Wei asked. I'll take you to see it after dinner. You'll know then, Li Jie said with a smile. More than half an hour later, after finishing their meal and settling the bill, they came out of the hot pot restaurant and got into the car again. At this time, it was already past 7 o'clock. I'll take you to see where you live, Li Jie glanced at Bai Wei who was sitting back. After saying that, he started the car and drove towards the company. 20 minutes later, the car arrived at a community near the company. After parking the car, Li Jie and Bai Wei walked into the community and called Song Ke-er. Li Jie, Song Ke-er was sitting on the sofa in the living room, eating potato chips and watching TV. She was shocked when she suddenly received a call from Li Jie. When she first joined the company and was still in the internship period, she offended Li Jie because she didn't recognize him, and was almost fired by Zhao Xie. Mr. Li. Song Ke-er said cautiously. Song Ke-er is still very satisfied with her current job. The work is easy, the salary is decent, and food is included. The most important thing is that the company provides accommodation. She is currently the only one living in the one-bedroom house, which is really comfortable. The only bad thing is that the company stipulates that you are not allowed to bring outsiders back to the dormitory, and if you are discovered, your accommodation benefits will be cancelled immediately. Therefore, she cannot bring her boyfriend over. Thank you for your voting support. Still asking for votes. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 122. Song Ke-er, are you in the dormitory? I'm in the dormitory. Mr. Li, do you have anything to do with me? I'll come over right away if I have something to do. You can clean up the dormitory. Ah. You want to come over? Why, can't it? No, of course. Okay, then clean up quickly. Song Ke-er put down her phone, feeling a little flustered and confused, wondering why Li Jie came to the dormitory to find her. What could happen if Li Jie came to the dormitory so late? Could it be that he has a wrong idea for her? Probably not, his girlfriend Xiao Qiao is so beautiful. But I'm not sure, men don't always eat from the bowl and look at the pot. Just when Song Karen was thinking wildly, the doorbell rang. Mr. Li, are you here? Seeing Song Ke-er, he opened the door and stuck his head out, looking at him carefully. Li Jie gave her a strange look and introduced to Bai Wei, "This is Song Ke-er, an employee of my company." Then he said to Song Ke-er, "This is Xiao Qiao's roommate Bai Wei. She will live in the dormitory with you for a while." "Ah, okay. Mr. Li, come in quickly." After seeing Bai Wei behind Li Jie, Song Ke-er knew that she was overthinking, and couldn't help but feel embarrassed, complaining about why Li Jie didn't speak clearly, otherwise she wouldn't misunderstand. Entering the room, Li Jie said to Bai Wei, "Take a look, how is this environment?" "This is your company's dormitory." Bai Wei looked around and found that the house had been simply decorated. Although it was not luxurious, it was simple, clean and warm. There were sofas, dining tables, TVs, refrigerators, washing machines, etc. in the living room. Commonly used furniture and appliances are available. "This is a good condition," she nodded. "There is also a water heater in the bathroom. You can still take a shower if it's too cold now. In addition, the kitchen has gas, induction cooker, and kitchen utensils. If you don't want to eat out, you can also buy food and cook it yourself." After Li Jie finished speaking, he took Bai Wei went to see the kitchen. Li Jie did not enter the bedroom and bathroom, but let Bai Wei go in and take a look. After all, this was a girl's dormitory. It was not easy for him as a boy to look around. It would be a bit embarrassing if he saw any girl's private belongings. "I'm so happy to work in your company," Bai Wei said with a smile after looking around. Li Jie smiled and said, "The accommodation conditions are better, so that employees can work with peace of mind. This dormitory is for 2 people. You should have seen it just now. There are 2 beds in the bedroom, but Song Ke-er is the only one living there at the moment." At this point, Li Jie glanced at Song Ke-er and said, he noticed that she was a little reluctant, obviously not happy for someone to move in and share the space with her, but he just pretended not to see it and didn't bother to care what she thought. Because the company currently has only 1 female employee, Song Ke-er, she was allowed to live alone for a period of time. But she is just an employee hired by Li Jie, not his lover. Of course, she will not let her, a grassroots employee, enjoy the treatment of living alone. To explain, Zhao Jia and Yu Zhongfeng belong to the management and are eligible to enjoy the treatment of living alone in 1 room and 1 living room. Li Jie looked at Bai Wei again, "If you think you can stay here temporarily during the winter vacation. It will be more convenient for you to work while living here, and I can also explain to Xiao Qiao." The meaning of his words was to tell her not to think too much, he only helped her because of Xiao Qiao. Bai Wei did not refuse, glanced at him and said, "Okay, then I won't be polite to you and Xiao Qiao. I do need a place to live. However, I don't want to live in vain." "What do you mean, do you want to pay my rent?" Li Jie asked with a smile. Bai Wei also smiled and said, "No, I can't give you the money either. I just want to find time every day to do what I can do in your company. I can't do anything else. But I can make copies of documents and serve tea and water. I can just use it as payment for the rent." "Okay, okay." Li Jie did not refuse Bai Wei's request. For a girl like Bai Wei, if you let her take advantage of you in vain, she would be very uneasy and resistant. "Do you think this will work?" Generally, companies have R/U0026D staff working overtime at night. You can go to the company from 7 to 9 p.m. to take charge of their logistics work, go to the ordering point to get supper, buy some drinks, buy cigarettes, etc. I won't give you any salary. The only benefit is a free late-night snack." "Li Jie, thank you," Bai Wei looked at him and said seriously. Li Jie smiled and said, "Okay, don't be polite. This dormitory is empty. If you live here, our company will have a free temporary worker." Song Ke-er couldn't help but rolled her eyes and said in her heart, "In your eyes, I am no longer a human being, right?" Unexpectedly, Li Jie happened to look over at her at this time. Songkir was startled and quickly showed a fake smile. Li Jie couldn't help but shook his head inwardly. This Songkir's temperament was really a bit arrogant and willful. Go and buy some towels, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, and other daily necessities. Buy one copy of all the things you need every day, Li Jie said, taking out 200 yuan from his wallet and handing it to Songkir. Oh, Songkir reluctantly took the money. Li Jie glanced at her and said, I'm not instigating you. Of the 200 yuan, 150 yuan is used to buy things, and the remaining 50 yuan is your errand fee. Of course, if you really don't want to go, you can. If you don't want the errand fee, just return the money to me, and don't worry, I won't have any objections to you because of this trivial matter. After all, it's off-duty now, and you have no obligation to handle personal matters for me. As soon as she heard that she had the money, Songkir's eyes immediately lit up and she said with a smile, no, how could I not want to? I'll buy it right now. After that, she took the money and ran out. Li Jie shook his head in a funny way. This girl is really greedy for money. In fact, if he hadn't been a boy and really unfit to buy necessities for girls, he wouldn't have used Songkir. When Li Jie worked part-time in his last life, what he hated most was the kind of boss who invaded your rest time and asked you to do private things and work for him. I only earn a small amount of salary when I work. Not only do I have to be bossed around by you at work, but I also have to be bossed around by you after get off work. Do I really think of myself as my master? Bai Wei glanced at Li Jie, bit her lip and said, I'll give you back the money you paid for the things. As she spoke, she took out $100 bill and a wad of change from her pocket. Li Jie looked at the money in her hand and said with a smile, no, when Xiao Qiao comes back when school starts next year, you can just treat us to a meal, and it will be the standard of 200 yuan. Bai Wei's hand holding the money paused, and she looked at him and nodded lightly, okay. Thanks to Goldfish for the 1000-point character reward, thanks to Book Friend 201904232222494111 for the 200-point reward, and thanks to 3 Book Friends 201912232220950231, 2020031209241341, and As You Like It AC for their rewards. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanjie. Chapter 123. Li Jie took out his phone and checked the time, it's already 8 o'clock. It's quite late. I'll go back. Bai Wei said, then let me give it to you. No, don't you have to work tomorrow? Go to bed early. Although Li Jie said there was no need to send it away, Bai Wei insisted on sending it downstairs. Li Jie came to the car and took out the key to unlock it. Then I'm leaving. You should go back quickly. Watching Li Jie's car slowly leave the community, Bai Wei felt extremely complicated. She had determined that Li Jie only helped her because of Xiao Qiao's face. But this boy is really good. When Songkir came back with a large bag of things, she found that Li Jie was gone. Where's Mr. Li? Bai Wei smiled and said, he has gone back. As soon as she heard that Li Jie had left, Songkir immediately relaxed. She felt very uncomfortable and constrained when she was with Li Jie, even more uncomfortable than when she was with Zhao Qia. At this time, Bai Wei smiled and stretched out her hand, please take care of me for a while from now on. Although Songkir didn't want anyone to move in, seeing Bai Wei being so enthusiastic, she didn't want to be cold-faced. She also smiled and stretched out her hand to shake her. For Li Jie, helping Bai Wei was just something he did casually after a sudden thought. But he really didn't expect that Bai Wei's situation would be so difficult. Looking at the wad of change she took out, Li Jie estimated that she only had more than 200 yuan left in her hand, including the money she earned from working today. At that moment, Li Jie really sympathized with the girl, because he had experienced how difficult it would be for people to have no money. However, he quickly restrained himself. As a classmate, he had done enough. Any more and it's a bit over the line. On the 17th, Li Jie didn't go anywhere. He just stayed in the rental house and coded. In one day, he wrote more than 15,000 words. In addition to the 2 updated chapters, he also saved 3 chapters for submission. It's not that he can't write more, but after all, he is not the kind of talented tentacle monster. After writing more than 10,000 words, he is already very tired, and his ideas are a bit unable to keep up. If he writes too hard, the quality will not be good. At night, Xiao Jiao secretly videotaped with him for a while his parents were asleep. Because the school staff dormitory building has poor sound insulation, Li Jie and Xiao Jiao kept their voices extremely low when chatting, making the atmosphere seem like they were having an affair. "Honey, do you miss me?" Xiao Jiao bit her lip and said seductively with a smile in her eyes. "Yeah," Li Jie looked at her and hummed softly. "Where did you think about it?" "I want to go anywhere." Xiao Jiao couldn't help but chuckle. "There's nothing I can do about it. I can't help you even through the screen. How about you take matters into your own hands?" Li Jie is a funny rumor maker. This president really starts talking. The two chatted quietly for more than half an hour. Xiao Jiao suddenly looked panicked, and then the video was turned off. Mother Jiao reached out to turn on the light in the bedroom, and gave her daughter a strange look. "Xiao Jiao, what are you looking at, so happy?" Xiao Jiao smiled guiltily. "I was just watching a movie. It was a comedy. It was quite interesting." Mother Jiao walked over and took her netbook over. "Okay, stop reading and go to sleep. Don't stay up late all the time in the future. It's not good for your health." Seeing Mother Jiao turn off the light again, take the netbook and leave, Xiao Jiao sighed and fell back on the bed. After thinking about it, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Li Jie. "Husband, my mother staged a surprise attack and her computer was confiscated. Let's talk next time." In the rental house, Li Jie looked at the messages on his phone, smiled and shook his head. On the 18th, Li Jie continued coding for a day and saved 3 more chapters. In the afternoon, Zhao Jia called and said that she had found a suitable translator at the School of Foreign Languages, signed a temporary employment contract, paid a deposit, and was now waiting for his visa to be approved. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, Li Jie had just come out of the bathroom after taking a shower when his cell phone on the coffee table rang. While wiping his hair, he walked over and picked up his cell phone. He found that it was Zhou Ziyu calling. He hesitated for a moment and then answered, "Ziyu, what's the matter?" Li Jie, on the other side of the phone, Zhou Ziyu smiled wantonly, her tone completely unlike her usual gentle and demure tone. "Have you been drinking?" Li Jie frowned. Zhou Ziyu chuckled again. "Well, I drank a little. I'm at the barbecue stall at Zionenman." "Li Jie, can you come out and drink with me?" There was obvious drunkenness in her tone. "Playing tricks again?" Li Jie shook his head in his mind. "No, I won't go. Don't drink anymore. Go back to the dormitory quickly. It's not safe for you as a girl to be outside so late." "Li Jie, are you worried about me?" "If you're worried, just come over here," Zhou Ziyu said wantonly. Li Jie sighed. "Tsuyu, stop making trouble, this is not like you." "Not like me," Zhou Ziyu smiled mockingly. "Li Jie, don't be too self-righteous and think you understand me very well. Forget it, I know you don't want to come, so I'll drink it myself." Bang, the phone was hung up. Li Jie shook his head, put down his phone, and decided to ignore her. A smart girl like Zhou Ziyu would never put herself in danger. She just pretended to be drunk and forced him to find her. As long as he didn't move, she would go back to the dormitory by herself. Thinking of this, Li Jie sat down on the sofa and turned on the TV to watch. After watching TV absent-mindedly for a while, Li Jie sighed and turned off the TV again. Knowing that Josiah was playing a trick, knowing that she was probably just pretending to be drunk. But when he thought of Josiah, a girl, drinking alone at a roadside stall late at night, Li Jie still couldn't let go. If something happened to Josiah tonight, he would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. He knew that being soft-hearted was a disease that could be cured, but Li Jie really couldn't harden his heart, especially when facing girls. Forget it, let's take a look. Li Jie thought about just watching from a distance. As long as he waited for Josiah to return to the dormitory, he wouldn't care. After changing clothes and going downstairs, Li Jie walked to school without driving. As soon as he arrived near the Zionan gate, Li Jie saw Josiah from a distance. As soon as the holidays came, the students went home one after another, and the business of the stall vendors suddenly became deserted, and most of the days they closed their stalls overnight. At this time, there was only a fruit stall and a barbecue stall left. There was only one customer at the barbecue stall, Josiah. She was wearing a white sweater jacket and a pair of tight jeans. She was lying on the table drunkenly, holding a glass of wine in her hand. There were 3 or 4 empty wine bottles on the table. She was obviously very drunk. Phew. Seeing such a beautiful girl drunk here, people who pass by from time to time will subconsciously take a few more glances. Thank you for your support in voting, please continue to ask for votes. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanjie. Chapter 124. After seeing this, a boy passing by hesitated for a moment, walked over and asked with concern, "Classmate, are you okay? Which dormitory do you live in? Can I send you back?" The owners of the barbecue stall are a middle-aged couple in their 40s. The male owner looked at the boy and said, "Classmate, do you know this female classmate?" The boy hesitated and said, "I don't know her, but she should be from our school." "Boss, what's wrong with her? Why did she drink so much?" "Who knows?" The landlady looked at Josiah and said, "This little girl seems to have lost her love and is in a bad mood. She has been drinking since she came here. We tried to persuade her to drink less, but she didn't listen." "That's right," the landlady thought for a while and then said, "She seemed to have made a phone call, and then she drank even more." The male boss said to the boss's wife, "This little girl will definitely not be able to leave. Please look for her mobile phone to see if there are calls from her boyfriend or classmates, and ask them to come pick her up." "Okay," the landlady nodded and walked to Josiah, looking for her cell phone. At this time, I heard someone say, "Excuse me, just leave the person to me." The 3 of them turned around and saw a slender, calm, and handsome boy walking over. Arriving next to Josiah, Li Jie looked at her and sighed in his heart. This time Josiah was sure of him and would not leave her alone. "Who are you? Just leave me to you." The boy looked at Li Jie with repulsion. "Yes, classmate, who are you to this female classmate?" the boss's wife also asked. "I'm her boyfriend." It's not that Li Jie wants to pretend to be Josiah's boyfriend, but that only with this identity can he reasonably take her away. "You said he was her boyfriend, what proof do you have?" the boy asked doubtfully. Li Jie didn't want to argue with the boy, so he took out his cell phone and dialed Josiah's cell phone. A few seconds later, Josiah's cell phone rang. The boss lady took it out of her pocket, took a look at it, and immediately no longer had any doubts. "Classmate, you are the same, how can you let your girlfriend drink alone outside so late? You are not afraid that something will happen to her? Even if you two have a conflict, you, as a boy, can't give way to the girl. What's more, your girl, my friend, is so beautiful." Li Jie was scolded by the landlady and was a little confused. How could she be so sure that he was Josiah's boyfriend? He curiously took Josie's cell phone and looked at it, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. It turned out that the person who noted on his cell phone number was actually, husband. Is it possible for my husband to be confused? This Josio is really amazing. The male boss glanced at Leisha and said, classmate, your girlfriend's account hasn't been settled yet. Can you settle it for her? How much? $18. After settling the bill, Leisha found that the boy who had acted bravely for justice had disappeared. Tsuyu. Tsuyu. Leisha patted Josio and found that she just said and then stopped responding, so he could only hold her up. Carrying Josio to school, he regretted not bringing the car. Vomit. Just after they had gone a long way, Josio in his arms suddenly retched, and Leisha quickly put her down. Sister, don't spit on me. He squatted on the ground and retched for a while. Although he didn't spit out anything, Josio became more or less awake. She glanced at him with drunken eyes and said with a smile, Leisha, are you here? Leisha touched his body and found that he didn't bring a tissue, so he could only wipe her mouth with the back of his sleeve. Let's go, I'll take you back to the dormitory. No, I won't go back. As soon as Josio heard that he was going back to the dormitory, he struggled hard. Seeing that he couldn't hold her, Leisha directly grabbed Josio's legs, lifted her up, and let her struggle. Josio struggled for a while and found that it was useless, so he shouted loudly, help! Help! Leisha was startled and quickly put her down again and covered her mouth. He didn't want to go into the police station again in the middle of the night. Or as a suspect. Hiss, Leisha took a breath and pulled his hand back abruptly. Are you a dog? Why do you bite people? It turned out that Josio opened his mouth and bit Leisha's hand hard, leaving a clear tooth mark on his middle finger. Drunk, playful, and biting, is this really the quiet and gentle Josio he knows? Seeing Josio's proud and provocative expression, Leisha couldn't help but feel a little angry no matter how good-tempered he was. He finally figured out that she was just cheating on her by drinking, pretending to be drunk to seduce her. Okay, don't you want to go back to the dormitory? That's okay, I'll take you to get a room. He is a grown man, how can he really be afraid of her? After saying that, Leisha picked up Josio, turned around and walked towards the small commercial street. This time, she didn't struggle anymore. After carrying Josio for more than 10 minutes and arriving at the small hotel above the Zingai Internet Cafe, Leisha let out a deep breath and quickly put her down. Holding the princess was really strenuous work. His arms were so sore that he couldn't hold her any further. After more than 2 months, I came to this small hotel again. The front desk was still the same middle-aged woman with a mean face and a bit of a mouth. She was sitting in front of the computer watching soap operas. The female receptionist was a little surprised to see Leisha. You haven't been here for a while, yo. There's a new person this time, she said this in her heart. Looking at Josio leaning in Leisha's arms, she really admired the boy in front of her. He could bring different girls over every time, and the girls were all very beautiful. Especially the one in front of me, it's so beautiful. Leisha didn't bother to care what she thought, so he handed over 100 yuan and said, a double bedroom. The female receptionist accepted the money and gave him 30 yuan in change. Do you still want the previous one? Just that one. Leisha took the key, picked up Josio, and walked to the room. When he came to the room, he pulled back the quilt and put her on the bed. Looking at Josio with flushed cheeks and blurred eyes, who seemed to be drunk again, Leisha suddenly remembered that sentence again, smart hunters often appear as prey. A goddess-level beauty, drunk on the bed, letting you have whatever you want, what kind of temptation is this? In terms of appearance alone, Josio is definitely the prettiest among all the girls Leisha has ever seen. Except for her smile, which is a little stiff and unnatural, she has almost no shortcomings in appearance and figure. Whether it is Xiaoqiao, Shenzhenyi, or Lu Kaiyu, compared with her, they are all slightly inferior in appearance. Therefore, the words goddess level are really well deserved when placed on Zhou Ziyu. Li Jie stared at her for more than 10 minutes, and finally sighed. He didn't know how many times he sighed tonight. Li Jie really didn't expect that one day he would be worse than a beast. He pulled the quilt, covered Zhou Ziyu, stood up and prepared to leave. But at this moment, Zhou Ziyu suddenly stood up, rushed towards him and hugged him from behind. Thanks to Canoe in the Sea for the 5,000-point reward, thanks to Zhu and Chen for the 500-point reward, thanks to Wanyan 6 for the reward many times, and thank you for the reward of having an awesome name. You are the only one with 2 index names. Thank you for your support. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 125. Li Jie was startled and froze in place. Zhou Ziyu held Li Jie's waist tightly with both hands, pressed her charming face against his back, and said softly, "Don't leave, okay?" Her voice was full of weakness and grievance. "Ziyu, why are you doing this?" Li Jie held her hand on his waist and tried to pull it off. "Li Jie, don't you want me?" Zhou Ziyu said softly and resentfully. Li Jie's hand paused. "Even if something happens between us, our relationship cannot change. I can't make you any promises." "Tsuyu, are you sure you want to continue?" Li Jie's voice was extremely calm. His subtext is that one night stand doesn't need to be discussed. Zhou Ziyu was silent for a while and said seriously, "Don't worry, it's just tonight. After tonight, I won't pester you anymore, let alone ruin the relationship between you and Xiaoqiao." "Girl, the smell of tea is really strong." Li Jie didn't bother to care whether what she said was true or false. If Zhou Ziyu really thought that having sex once would be enough to defeat him, then she was really overthinking it. Since Zhou Ziyu wanted to take the initiative to dedicate herself, he would just satisfy her. He really didn't think he was angry. The worst thing is, give her some more money afterwards to compensate her. Li Jie used force on his hand and pulled Zhou Ziyu's hand away. Just when Zhou Ziyu was slightly frustrated and thought she had failed again, Li Jie turned around and took the initiative to hug her. Li Jie reached out and lifted Zhou Ziyu's chin, looking at the innocent and charming face in front of him, he smiled a little wantonly. "My dearest lady, how can I make tea?" His smile was different from the calm and gentle one in the past, but had a little more evil charm, which shocked Zhou Ziyu, and then she was kissed by him. Li Jie had already kissed Zhou Ziyu's lips once, but when he kissed her again, he was still so intoxicated that he couldn't stop. What surprised him was that Zhou Ziyu seemed to be a newbie with no experience at all. Not to mention this girl's acting looks quite similar. Li Jie didn't believe that a tea girl like Zhou Ziyu was really inexperienced. I don't know how many men have been thinking about a beauty of this level since she first grew up next door. The possibility that she has no experience at this time will not be higher than the chance that he will win another 5 million by buying another lottery ticket. How many? More than 40 minutes later. Li Jie looked at the mottled blood stains on the white sheets, and his mood was indescribably complicated. This is not the first time he has seen this thing. Xiaoqiao's bed sheet from before is still stored in the house in Shanghai. What a winner! He really didn't expect that Zhou Ziyu would be so inexperienced. How can this be? Even if he still couldn't believe it, the facts told Li Jie that it was true. Zhou Ziyu gave him the first time. As for whether it is fake, he is also quite experienced, especially having had one experience with Xiaoqiao, so he can still tell the difference between true and false. Li Jie leaned on the bed, stretched out his hand to hold Zhou Ziyu, who was dripping with sweat, into his arms. He had no regrets in his heart, only a deep sense of accomplishment. Entering the sage time, Li Jie suddenly figured it all out as soon as his mind cleared up. After all, he was tricked by Zhou Ziyu tonight. She was much smarter than he gave her credit for. Drunkenness and acting out are all a trap. Josiah knew clearly that she couldn't deceive Li Jie, so she deliberately acted to make him think that she was a very casual girl who was not reserved or self-loving. Let Li Jie despise her and relax his vigilance. Then, the plot turned around and it was even more surprising. But she's really not afraid, why won't he admit it when he puts on clothes? Unless. Li Jie glanced at Josiah in his arms, sighed and said, Ziu, what good can I do? Is it really worth what you do? He really couldn't understand Josiah. With her looks and intelligence, it was not impossible to find a man with better conditions than him. Why should she be so persistent with him? Josiah raised her pretty face and said softly and gently, it's worth it, but you don't know how good you are. Excellent. Li Jie didn't even know what was outstanding about him, but she was more confident than him. Tsuyu, I'm sorry. I was a little rough just now. He wanted to know that this was Josiah's first time. He would definitely not mess with her, and he would never bring her to such a cheap hotel. This is all of my own free will, you don't have to apologize. Josiah forced a smile and said seriously, Li Jie, what I said was just for tonight. After tonight, I will never pester you again. Li Jie looked at her and couldn't help but feel angry and funny. He stretched out his hand on her little butt that felt so good and slapped it hard. Pa! Ah! Josiah yelled softly, biting her lower lip, feeling a little aggrieved. Why did you hit me? Why are you hitting you? Who told you to play hard to get with me? If I see you playing tricks again in the future, I will hit you every time, Li Jie said with a half smile. This Josiah really gave him a must-choose question. Li Jie believed that if he gave Josiah a sum of money to send her away now, she would probably really let go and stop pestering him. But he couldn't let go, so he had no choice. It was precisely because Josiah had seen through him that she dared to sacrifice herself boldly. She was betting her most precious possessions and her biggest capital on his character. You said later, Josiah looked at him and said expectantly. Li Jie smiled and stretched out his hand, tapping her forehead, okay, stop acting. You know I can't let you go. Josiah looked at Li Jie and smiled with relief, as if he was relieved. She leaned her head in his arms again and said softly, as long as you don't abandon me and have a place for me in your heart, that's enough. Don't worry, I won't fight with Xiaoqiao, and I will never destroy him. The relationship between you and Xiaoqiao. Thank you for your voting support. Keep asking for votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanjie. Chapter 126. This is really great. But it was what Li Jie wanted to hear most. If Josiah was really proud of his favor and forced him to make a choice between her and Xiaoqiao, that left him with no choice again. Even if he doesn't want to let go, he will have no choice but to give up on her. So, what sister? This is his caring and good sister. Li Jie lowered his head and kissed Josiah on the lips, and hugged her tightly. Ziu, except for my title, I can't give you anything else. As long as I have it, you will have a share. This is also a common line used by scumbags. As long as you don't leave me, he added in his heart. Josiah said a soft hum and said nothing. After a while, she thought about it and asked, Husband, don't you have any regrets or blame me at all? Girl, you changed your tune so quickly. When Li Jie heard Josiah call him husband, he immediately remembered that she noted his mobile phone number as husband, and couldn't help laughing. Tsuyu, you've got me, right. Where can I have it? And what happened to my phone number? Josiah also smiled when she heard Li Jie say his phone number. She looked up at him and said seriously, I have identified you. This girl is so smart and good at talking. Just changing one word, the feeling of the sentence has completely changed. You are so considerate, how can I blame you? Li Jie sighed with a smile. Do you really blame Josio for what happened tonight? In fact, it was just that he could not withstand the temptation. Even if there is no Josio, as he makes more and more money in the future, there will be Zhangziu, Zhaoziu, and Shenziu. The appearance of Josio only prompted him to make an earlier choice between the swing of love and greed. But after all, it was the experience of his previous life and the influence of his parents and family that made Li Jie completely lose confidence in love. Therefore, it was destined that he would not be able to guard Xiao Qiao for the rest of his life. Because I'm afraid of losing, because I don't dare to gamble. It's just that I've been lying to myself, Li Jie laughed to himself in his heart. After all, he was sorry for Xiao Qiao. The next morning, when Li Jie woke up, he saw Josio sleeping soundly in his arms, with a fair and delicate arm on his shoulder. Her sleeping face was peaceful and beautiful. Staring at Josio's innocent and charming face, Li Jie couldn't help but smile. It is definitely something to be proud of to have such a stunning beauty. It greatly satisfies men's possessiveness and desire to conquer. He lowered his head and kissed her charming face. Josio was startled by him and woke up. She opened her eyes, smiled at him, and said softly, "Honey, are you awake?" "Yeah," Li Jie also smiled at her. He picked up the mobile phone on the bedside and took a look and found that it was already past 7 o'clock. "Tsuyu, let me take you to dinner." "Good." The two stood up to get dressed. Josio felt something strange somewhere on Li Jie's body and couldn't help but be stunned. Li Jie said nonchalantly, "It's okay, it's a normal reaction." "Husband, if you want, I can do it," Josio bit her lip and said. "No, you should rest for a few more days," she was injured, so Li Jie couldn't bear to bully her again. "Honey, how about I help you relax in other ways?" Seeing that Li Jie didn't speak, Josio smiled coquettishly at him and lowered his head. Li Jie took a deep breath. Who wouldn't like such a considerate and proactive good sister? Half an hour later, the two finally put on their clothes. I have to say that Josio is truly the most feminine woman Li Jie has ever seen. Even her movements when putting on clothes are indescribably elegant and beautiful. When checking out, the female front desk noticed the sheets on Li Jie's hand and said, "Sheets cannot be taken away." Li Jie subconsciously glanced at Josio and said to the female receptionist, "We accidentally soiled the sheets. How about we compensate you?" The female receptionist looked at him deeply and nodded, "Okay, bed sheets are 30 yuan. 30 yuan? Li Jie felt that she was a bit blackmailing. How could an ordinary white sheet be worth 30 yuan? But now, let alone 30 yuan, he has to give her even if she wants 300 yuan. He took out 10 yuan from his wallet and handed it to her. The female receptionist took the money and said, "RMB 30 for bed sheets, RMB 20 for deposit, and I'll charge you another RMB 10. That's just right." After coming out of the small hotel, Li Jie took Josio to a breakfast shop on the small commercial street. He found an empty table and sat down, and ordered 2 drawers of steamed buns, 2 bowls of millet porridge, and a stack of pickles. Li Jie was really a little hungry. He ate half of the buns one by one in one go, and then took a few big gulps of millet porridge before he felt less hungry. Josio's eating style is very gentle, eating steamed buns in small bites, and taking small sips of porridge with a spoon from time to time. Li Jie found that Josio had been looking at him and smiling. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. He smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Josio shook his head slightly, "No, I'm just in a good mood." He was finally captured by her. After breakfast, the two came out of the breakfast shop. Josio took the initiative to hold Li Jie's arm. "Honey, where are we going?" After hearing her question, Li Jie couldn't help but hesitate. It would be too heartless to send her back to the dormitory directly. But he can't take her back to the rental house, otherwise he will really become Hong Shixian. He glanced at Joziu and noticed that her clothes were a little wrinkled. He smiled and said, "Shall I take you to buy some clothes?" Okay, Joziu nodded. After walking not far, he saw the BMW 530i parked downstairs of the rental house. Li Jie took out the key and unlocked it. Joziu looked at this BMW 530i and couldn't help but smile. "What are you laughing at?" Li Jie glanced at her. Joziu bit her lower lip to hold back her smile. "I just thought of something interesting." Li Jie reached out and opened the passenger door, letting Joziu get in, and then he also sat in the driver's seat. Joziu looked at the layout in the car, then glanced at Li Jie and said, "Hubby, do you know where we first met?" At a party. Li Jie didn't understand why she suddenly said this. No, Joziu's expression was very subtle. No, Li Jie was a little surprised. Where is that? If he had seen such a beautiful woman like Joziu before, there is no way he would not have had any impression of her. "It's in the parking lot behind Lanhui Hotel," Joziu said with a smile. Li Jie was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "So the two girls outside the car that night were you and?" "It's me and Lily." After Joziu finished speaking, he smiled again. Li Jie glanced at her and knew what she was laughing at. "Ziu, you don't have to envy Xiao Qiao. After you get better in 2 days, I will take you to experience it." Joziu smiled and said nothing. Looking at Li Jie who was driving, she said in her heart, "This boy is her big tree, she will rely on her in the future." She envied Xiao Qiao and how lucky she was to get to know Li Jie earlier than she did. Thanks to the godly handsome man for the 5,000-point character reward. Thanks to Chang'an Wang for the 200-point reward. Thanks to Wanyan 6 for the many rewards. Thanks to Jixiang Ruyi 1 and 20210209201514738729459 for their rewards. Thank you for your support. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 127. Driving all the way to the commercial street in the city center, Li Jie found a parking space and parked the car. Then he took Joziu to the pedestrian street, found a brand store and walked in. "Welcome, what styles of clothes are you two going to look at? I can recommend it to you." The shopping guide smiled politely, and when her eyes fell on Joziu next to Li Jie, a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. This girl is simply amazing. More beautiful than a star. She couldn't help but glance at Li Jie again. Although this boy was very handsome and had a good temperament, compared with girls, he was obviously not worthy of her. She didn't know how he got such a beautiful girlfriend. Li Jie glanced at Joziu and said to the female shopping guide, "Please help my girlfriend match some clothes." "Sir, your girlfriend is so pretty and looks good in anything she wears," the female shopping guide complimented. After discussing with Joziu, the female shopping guide helped her choose a pair of black denim tights, a white bottoming shirt, and a blue woolen coat. A few minutes later, Joziu walked out of the fitting room. The female shopping guide's eyes lit up and she said with a smile, "Beauty, this dress looks so good on you." Li Jie on the side also nodded. Just like what the female shopping guide said, a beautiful person will look good in anything she wears. With Joziu's appearance and figure, it is estimated that she would still look good even if she was wrapped in a whole curtain. After choosing 2 more sets of clothes and a set of underwear, Joziu told Li Jie that enough was enough. Li Jie said to the female shopping guide, "How much is it?" The female shopping guide smiled and said, "Sir, the total is 8,659, I can give you a 15% discount." "Okay, swipe your card." Li Jie took out his bank card and handed it to her. The female shopping guide took the bank card with smiling hands and said, "Wait a moment." 5 or 6 minutes later, the female shopping guide watched Li Jie carrying the shopping bags and Joziu walking out of the store. While saying that they were welcome to come back next time, she thought to herself, no wonder she could find such a beautiful girlfriend. She has so much money. A man like a boy who spent 7 or 8,000 without blinking an eye should be quite powerful from her point of view. After coming out of the brand store, Li Jie took Zhou to a men's clothing store. He also had to buy himself a change of clothes. Seeing Li Jie walking out of the fitting room, Zhou looked him up and down. "How is it?" Li Jie asked. "Well, very good." "Husband, why don't you let me choose a suit for you?" Zhou smoothed her hair and said warmly. Li Jie was stunned for a moment and then came to his senses. "Why, my clothes are a bit bad." Zhou smiled and said, "No, I just want to choose a set of clothes for you." Li Jie looked at her and nodded, "Okay." Zhou walked around the store and picked out a pair of slim pants, a turtleneck sweater, a coat, and a pair of shoes for Li Jie. Li Jie saw that she chose it casually, and he didn't see any matching skills. "Husband, why don't you go try to change?" Zhou gave him the clothes and shoes. A few minutes later, Li Jie stood in front of the fitting mirror and looked at himself, and he was instantly convinced. This outfit obviously suited him better than the one he chose, and his appearance improved by a factor or two. In fact, he has seen a lot and knows how to dress. At least he is better than ordinary people, but compared with Zhou, he is really a bit inferior. Li Jie simply gave up and said to Zhou, "Zhou, can you help me choose another set of clothes?" "Okay," Zhou smiled. After selling the clothes and coming out of the store, Li Jie glanced at Zhou and said with a smile, "Zhou, if you think your taste is a bit bad, just say so. There's no need to deliberately save face for me." "No," Zhou said seriously, "I really think your choice is not bad." Li Jie smiled and shook his head inwardly. "You said it so sincerely, I almost believed it. What kind of family can raise a girl like Zhou? If Xiaoqiao is a boy's ideal girlfriend, Zhou is a man's most ideal lover." After getting in the car again, Li Jie wanted to take Zhou to the hotel, but suddenly remembered that he had forgotten his computer, but it was not worth going back to get it. It's better to buy another laptop. When he came to the computer city, Li Jie took a stroll and chose a Dell laptop costing more than 10,000 yuan. Then he said to Zhou, "Zhou, why don't you buy one too?" "Yeah," Zhou nodded. Women are more attentive than men when buying things. It only took Li Jie more than 10 minutes to buy the Dell laptop, but Zhou browsed all the counters in the computer store and spent more than 40 minutes before choosing one. There are more than 9,000 Asus laptops in Taiwan. Li Jie took a look and found that it was the Asus F8H725 he bought before. Why don't you choose a better looking one? He didn't think this business notebook was in line with girls' aesthetics. This one is very good, cost-effective, and practical, Zhou said. After buying the laptop, Li Jie asked Zhou if he wanted to buy another mobile phone. Zhou said no. She took out her phone, shook it, and said coquettishly to Li Jie, "Our phones are still couple phones." "What kind of couple machine?" "They all use Nokia 6300. Zhou's move made Li Jie see her little girl side. After all, she is only a girl of 18 or 19, and no matter how mature she is, she still has the temperament of a little girl. "By the way, how old are you, Zhou?" "I was born in 1989. "In 1989? Then you are only 17 years old. 1 year younger than Xiaoqiao." Seeing that Li Jie was very surprised, Zhou said, "I'm not the youngest, there are still people in our class who are 90 years old. Is this a matter of age? But which 17-year-old girl is as mature as you?" Li Jie thought of the time in his previous life when he first entered college. His emotional intelligence was so touching that he couldn't bear to look at it, and he was 2 years older than Zhou. There is really no comparison between people. That is to say, he was reborn, otherwise girls like Josiah would be really out of reach for him. After leaving the computer city, Li Jie drove Josiah to a star-rated hotel and got a double bedroom. Going upstairs to swipe his card and walking into the room, Li Jie said to Josiah, "Ziu, go take a shower first." The conditions of the small hotel were simple and it was inconvenient to take a shower. In the morning, the two of them just washed up briefly. Josiah took a change of underwear and went to take a shower, while Li Jie opened the newly purchased Dell laptop and browsed the check information. In fact, after winning the lottery, Li Jie immediately thought of gambling. As long as there is less pressure, the spinach company should not tip the table. But the problem is that he never watches football. The only time he watched football was during the 2002 World Cup. So Li Jie gave up on making quick money until he saw a piece of news on the internet while he was in the Shanghai Stock Exchange. Thank you all for your support, please vote. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 128. In a certain city in China, when an old house in a village was being renovated, more than 1,000 silver coins were dug out of the ground. The villagers who followed after hearing the news snatched up all the silver coins. Seeing this news, Li Jie suddenly remembered a piece of news about the Czech Republic that he had read in his previous life. The value of that windfall is not small. If he can get it first, his assets will be doubled several times in a flash. Not only will his career be fully developed, but the speed of wealth accumulation will also be greatly accelerated. Moreover, this money is from a reasonable and legal source, just like winning a lottery prize. No one can use the source of funds to start his business in the future. So, for this money, he had to go to the Czech Republic. Half an hour later, Josiah finished taking a bath and walked out of the bathroom wearing a bath towel. While wiping her hair, she walked to Li Jie and asked, "What are you looking at?" Li Jie turned to look at her and said with a smile, checking the information, "Have you finished taking a shower?" "After washing, you go and wash too," Josiah said warmly. "Don't worry, let me dry your hair first." Li Jie stood up and picked up the small hair dryer on the table. Josiah looked at him and said softly, Li Jie was blow-drying Josiah's hair while looking at her. He found that after she took a shower, her skin looked better and better, so fair and supple that she could squeeze out water. After helping Josiah blow-dry his hair, Li Jie also went to the bathroom to take a shower, but he took a shower very quickly and came out in 15 or 6 minutes. Josiah was leaning on the bed, fiddling with the Asus laptop. When she heard the movement, she looked up and looked at him. "I finished washing it so quickly." Li Jie smiled, walked over to the bed and hugged her. The two were affectionate for a while, and Li Jie thought for a moment and said, "Tsuyu, do you have a passport?" Josiah was a little surprised when he heard this. "No, I have never been abroad, so I have never applied for a passport." "Husband, are you going abroad?" Li Jie nodded. "I have something to do. I'm going to the Czech Republic in a few days. I think if you have a passport, I can take you with me. Now it seems that you can't go. Applying for a passport now is not as convenient as in later generations. It usually takes 7 days to get a passport. Now it takes half a month at the fastest, and it takes more than 20 days or even a month at a later time." "Czech, that Czech in Eastern Europe?" Josiah was even more surprised. "Yes, that's the Czech." Josiah was a little curious about what Li Jie was going to the Czech Republic, but she didn't ask. Instead, she said, "Husband, how many days are you going to go this time?" "It's hard to say. If it's quick, it might take 3 to 5 days to come back. If it's slow, it might take 10 days and a half," Li Jie said uncertainly. Josiah nodded and said, "Husband, I will wait for you to come back in the dormitory." "Wait for me?" Li Jie was a little surprised. "Ziu, won't you go home during the holidays?" Josiah leaned in his arms and said softly, "Husband, I want to stay with you for a few more days. If I wait until school starts. She didn't say the next words, but Li Jie also understood what it meant. It would not be easy for the two of them to meet again after school starts. With Xiao Qiao here, the school is crowded and crowded. Thinking of Xiao Qiao, Li Jie felt very guilty and didn't know how to face her. The two were silent for a while, and Zhou Ziyu said softly, "Hubby, I'm sorry." "What are you saying you're sorry for?" Li Jie shook his head and looked down at Zhou Ziyu in his arms. "Ziyu, if you want to say I'm sorry, it's me who should say it to you." Zhou Ziyu didn't expect him to say that and was stunned for a moment. "I feel sorry for you to follow me with no name or status." Li Jie's voice was full of apology. A warm current flashed through Zhou Ziyu's heart, and she slightly avoided his eyes. "Hubby, I really didn't see the wrong person." There was something strange about her voice too. Li Jie looked at Zhou Ziyu, who was obviously moved, and sighed inwardly. What he said just now was half true and half false, and it was hard to say how moved Zhou Ziyu was at this time, how much true or false. Now that something has happened, you have to think about solving it. There is no use in escaping and regretting. He first wanted to stabilize Zhou Ziyu's side so that she would not fight, and then find a way to deal with Xiao Qiao so that she could acquiesce in Zhou Ziyu's existence. One is his girlfriend on the surface, and the other is his lover behind the scenes. This is the best outcome Li Jie expected. Of course, it is very difficult to operate. If you are not careful, you will end up with a Hatchetshura field. But no matter how difficult it is, he still has to handle it. Xiao Qiao, Zhou Ziyu, and Li Jie are not willing to give up. Some people married 8 girls at the same time, and some kept more than 100 lovers. He didn't believe that he couldn't handle 2 girls. At noon, Li Jie and Zhou Ziyu did not go out, but ate in the hotel restaurant. After lunch, Li Jie returned to the room and started typing. After going to the Czech Republic, he would definitely not have much time to type. He would try to save as many manuscripts as possible before leaving. Zhou Ziyu sat next to Li Jie and stayed with him quietly. Li Jie wrote for a while, stopped, and said to her, "Ziyu, you don't have to stay with me all the time. It's quite boring. You can go online and watch movies or something." Zhou Ziyu smiled and shook her head. "No, I'm not bored at all." She paused. "Besides, I don't have many opportunities to accompany you like this." After hearing what she said, Li Jie was suddenly speechless. It took Li Jie less than 40 minutes to finish coding a chapter. He kept the manuscript. He felt a little thirsty and wanted to get a bottle of water. At this time, 2 bottles of water were handed to him. "Mineral water or lemonade, hubby, which one do you want to drink?" Zhou Ziyu held a bottle of water in one hand and looked at him with a smile. Li Jie was stunned for a moment. "How do you know what I like to drink?" "I just know it." "It's better to drink some lemonade, it can refresh you," Zhou Ziyu said, unscrewing the cap of the lemonade bottle. Li Jie took the water from her hand and asked curiously while drinking, "I remember there is no lemonade in the small refrigerator, right?" "I ordered room service and asked the waiter to deliver it." "You were too focused on writing a book to pay attention." Zhou Ziyu stood up, came behind Li Jie, and put her hands on his shoulders. "Hubby, you must be a little tired after writing for so long. Let me give you a squeeze on your shoulders." Li Jie wanted to say that he only wrote for 40 minutes and was actually not tired at all. But Zhou Ziyu had already started to squeeze his shoulders, and he couldn't bear to ignore her kindness. Feeling her skillful techniques and moderate strength, Li Jie took a breath of comfort. "Ziyu, have you ever learned massage? Her technique is very professional." Zhou Ziyu's massaging hand paused. "No, I just massaged it for my mother a few times. This is also my first time massaging a boy," she added. After squeezing Li Jie's shoulders, Zhou Ziyu then pressed his head. Not to mention, after Zhou Ziyu's massage, Li Jie felt that his body was really soothed and relaxed, and his spirit was also lifted a lot. Thanks for the instant reward of 8,888 points, thanks to the newspaper sellers Pi Daxing, Wanyan 6, and Gongguan number 13 for the many rewards, thanks to WXCP for the 500 points reward, thanks to the green peppers in the ground, and my way is the heart. Rewards for 2 people. Thank you for your support. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn. Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 129. His mental state improved, and he could write very smoothly. It only took him 30 minutes to finish the second chapter. At this time, the doorbell rang. Josiah got up and opened the door, and soon came back with a fruit plate. Husband, take a rest and eat some fruit. Okay. Lija looked at the fruit plate and found that there were bananas, oranges, grapes, strawberries, and lychees. As soon as he picked up an orange, Josiah took it over and said, "Honey, let me peel it for you." She peeled off the orange peel, broke off a segment of the orange, and then picked the orange pulp clean before passing the segment to Lija's mouth. Lija had never been served like this before, and he was not used to it. "Tsuyu, how about I do it myself?" Josiah smiled at him. "Eat it, I peeled it all." Lija glanced at her, then opened his mouth and ate the orange slice. Josiah fed Lija piece by piece. After finishing the orange, he took another lychee, peeled it open and fed it to him. "Honey, let's have another lychee." Lija glanced at the lychee on his lips and smiled bitterly. "Tsuyu, please don't be so considerate. I'm afraid I won't be able to adapt to being away from you in the future." Josiah looked at him and said softly, "Husband, as long as you don't abandon me, I will always be by your side." Looking at Josiah, Lija sighed in his heart. He finally knew what it means to be able to make steel even if it is tempered 100 times. Even though he knew that what she said was just love words that could not be taken seriously, he couldn't help but be a little moved. Lija stretched out his hand to bring Josiah over, let her sit on his lap, then picked up a lychee, peeled it open, and handed it to her mouth. "Ziu, can I feed you one too?" "Yeah." Josiah looked at him with a smile, opened his mouth and ate the lychee. Looking at Josiah's pink little mouth, chewing the pulp, Lija's Adam's apple slid and turned his head to kiss her. Josiah's beautiful eyes widened slightly and he swallowed the pulp in his mouth. The two kissed passionately for a while. Josiah noticed that Lija's hand was stretching into her clothes and gave him a gentle push. "Honey, you'd better write your book first." "Okay, let me let you go first." Lija kissed her on the cheek again, then let her go with a smile. After one afternoon, Lija finally realized what red sleeves are so fragrant. Under Josiah's company and care, his coding efficiency soared. By 6 o'clock in the evening, he had written 6 chapters and more than 18,000 words. Excluding breaks, it took less than 4 hours in total, and on average it took less than 40 minutes to write a chapter. Normally, Lija would never be able to write so fast, because writing for a long time will make his spirit more and more exhausted, and his coding efficiency will become worse and worse. It may only take 40 minutes to write the first chapter, but it may take more than an hour to write the last chapter. After saving the written chapters into the draft box, Lija closed the computer and said to Josiah, "Are you a little hungry? I'll take you to eat." "What do you want to eat?" Josiah smiled and said, "I listen to you." "Then let's go eat Western food." "Good." Lija took Josiah and drove to a Western restaurant with a good reputation. When he came to the Western restaurant, he found a seat by the window and ordered a couple set meal. The set meal includes appetizers, main courses, desserts, and drinks. Lija watched Josiah eating elegantly with a knife and fork, sipping a cocktail, and was thoughtful. In fact, he brought Josiah to the Western restaurant just to see her reaction. Where did a girl from an ordinary family learn Western etiquette? Josie's movements are very standardized, such as the posture of holding the knife and fork, the order of using tableware, and never talking when chewing food. Even many people who often eat Western food do not abide by dining etiquette as strictly as she does. As for the dining etiquette of Western food, Li Jie had only checked it online before. This was the first time he saw a girl eating in such a standardized and elegant manner. Tsuyu, do you often eat Western food? Josio chewed a few more times, swallowed the food in his mouth, and then chuckled and said, "No, it's just that I've eaten it a few times before." Li Jie nodded, vaguely understanding something. This girl must have been deliberately cultivated and taught by someone. After the main course, 2 pieces of filet mignon, was served, Li Jie picked up the knife and fork, cut a large piece of steak, and put it into his mouth. Josio stopped him with a smile and said, "Hubby, how about I help you, cut it?" Li Jie stopped, glanced at her, smiled and nodded, "Okay." Josio took his portion of steak and started cutting it. Li Jie watched her skillfully cut the steak into small pieces of even thickness and medium size. He thought for a while and said, "What do uncle and aunt do?" Hearing this, Josio paused with the hand holding the knife and fork, and was silent for a few seconds before saying, "My parents divorced when I was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. After the divorce, my mother went to the south with a man, and my father not long after, he remarried and had another son." After listening to Josio's words, Li Jie sighed in his heart. He actually guessed that her precocious puberty must be related to her family. The aunt that uncle came to find later was not good to you. Josio said calmly, "It's not bad. At least they gave me food, let me go to school, and they didn't abuse me." Although she spoke calmly, Li Jie could hear a lot of sadness in her words. Seeing Li Jie looking at her with pity, Josio smiled and said, "Hubby, you don't have to feel sorry for me. It's all over. Look, aren't I very good now? I even met you." After saying that, she handed over the cut steak. "It's ready to eat." "Tsuyu, are you still living with your uncle now?" Li Jie forked a small piece of steak and put it in his mouth. Josio started cutting his own steak again. "No, when I was in the 3rd grade of junior high school, my mother came back and picked me up, and I have been living with my mother since then." "Picked up?" "Well, she took me to Hangzhou, where she works." "In other words, you went to high school in Hangzhou and only took the college entrance examination in Chuncheng." Li Jie finally understood why she looked so much like a girl from Jiangnan. On the one hand, her personality was on the one hand, and on the other hand, the most important period of her life was during adolescence. "Spent in Jiangnan." "Yeah," Josio nodded slightly, then picked up a small piece of steak and ate it. "So how is your relationship with your aunt?" "It's okay." Listening to Josio's tone, Li Jie felt that the relationship between her and her mother was not very good. Thinking about it, if she really wanted to stay in Hangzhou, she wouldn't have applied for Hongchen Normal University. Josio continued, "Actually, I have been living on campus since the first year of high school and rarely go home. She lives with an uncle. It is very embarrassing and inconvenient for me to go back." "That's why you don't want to go back." Li Jie felt a little uncomfortable for no reason. "The girl in front of me has 2 homes, but has no home to return to." His heart softened and he blurted out, "Ziu, how about you go home with me to celebrate the new year? Thank you for your voting support. Keep asking for votes and favorites. I really didn't want to be a warm man when I was reborn." Author, Li Yuanzhe. Chapter 130. When Josio heard this, he was stunned for a moment, and then said in surprise, "Husband, are you really willing to take me back?" Li Jie actually regretted it as soon as he said it. Can someone just pick it up from home? Could it be that he was tricked by her again? But seeing the surprised look on Josio's face, Li Jie couldn't change his words. Such a considerate and good girl is really heartbreaking. Ziu, if you don't want to go home, I will take you back to celebrate the new year, but... Before Li Jia could finish speaking, Zhou Ziu said first, honey, I won't misunderstand anything, nor will I have any extravagant hopes because of this. Li Jia shook his head and said, that's not what I meant. What I meant is that my family's conditions are actually quite poor. You must be mentally prepared. He actually wanted to see how Zhou Ziu would react after seeing the real situation in his family. If you don't know how to buy a standing ticket, just take the train overnight and run away. Of course, this is just a joke. However, Li Jia really wanted to see her emoticons. Zhou Ziu looked at him deeply and said seriously, husband, as long as I'm with you, it doesn't matter how bad the conditions are. Li Jia smiled, but he didn't believe it at all. Love is a luxury. No matter how deep the relationship is without money, it cannot withstand the daily necessities of life. If he had no money, let alone having two women, even keeping one would be a luxury. The meal took more than an hour, and it was already past 8 p.m. when we returned to the hotel. Back in the room, Zhou Ziu took off her coat and hung it on the hanger, revealing a white bottoming shirt and a perfect figure. Li Jia glanced at her and took off his coat. Ziu, you've had a hard day waiting for me, how about I give you a massage? Zhou Ziu smiled and said, it's okay, I'm not tired. Husband, I see that the manuscript you wrote has not been revised yet. How about I help you revise it? There's no rush to revise the manuscript, let me serve you first. Li Jia didn't allow her to refuse and pulled her onto the bed. Okay, seeing Li Jia's insistence, Zhou Ziu could only agree. She still doesn't know Li Jia well enough. If it were Xiao Qiao, she would definitely ask him, is your massage regular? Tsuyu, please take off all your clothes, otherwise it will be inconvenient during the massage. Zhou Ziu bit her lip lightly and gave him a charming look. At first she really thought Li Jia was going to give her a massage, but now she couldn't tell what he was thinking. With Li Jia's help, she took off her white lining and her jeans, leaving only her underwear. What to do next? Just lie down. Li Jia asked Zhou Ziu to lie on the bed, reached for a pillow and put it under her waist, leaned down, kissed her and massaged her whole body. Caressing Zhou Ziu's fair and tender skin, Li Jia couldn't help but couldn't put it down. Her figure is so good, and the enjoyment she brings him is absolutely top-notch. What's more, being able to hold such a stunning beauty under your body gives a man a sense of conquest and possessiveness. After 10 minutes of warm-up massage, Li Jia looked at her, her hair was messy, her pretty face was red, and her beautiful eyes were blurred. And Li Jia was also a little tired. Pick her up and prepare to go to the bathroom to take a bath. After all, both of them had sweated a lot, and their bodies were sticky and uncomfortable. But at this moment, the mobile phone on the bedside table rang. Li Jia put Zhou Ziu down, reached for the phone and took a look, his eyes narrowed slightly. Honey, whose phone number is it? Zhou Ziu said feebly. Not only do the two have the same cell phone model, but they also have the same ringtone. Xiao Qiao's, Li Jia's voice was a little low. When Zhou Ziu heard this, he was a little nervous, then answer it quickly. I won't say anything. Li Jia glanced at her and answered the phone, Qiao Bao. Husband, what are you doing? Do you miss me? Xiao Qiao's cheerful voice came from the other side of the phone. Of course I miss you. Li Jia's voice was a little depressed, and his heart was filled with guilt. If Xiao Qiao answered his call like this, he would have the intention to kill someone. At this moment, he really felt that he was despicable and scumbag, and he was speechless when facing Xiao Qiao. In the end, he ended up living the life he hated the most. Men, when they indulge like this, they forget everything, and as soon as their rationality returns, they feel sorry for their girlfriends. Husband, where are you? Are you at home? Xiao Qiao asked with a smile. I'm Li Jie hesitated again. The home Xiao Jiao mentioned was a rental house, which made him feel even more uncomfortable. Husband, what's wrong with you? Are you in a bad mood? Even though he couldn't see Li Jie's expression, Xiao Jiao could feel that he was in a bad mood from his voice. No, I just typed all afternoon, so I'm a little tired, Li Jie said with a forced smile. After saying that, he subconsciously lowered his head and glanced at Zhou Ziyu. Xiao Jiao didn't think much, and just said with concern, Husband, you should take more rest and don't write books all the time. Yeah, Li Jin said. Seeing that Li Jie was tired, Xiao Jiao said a few more words and hung up the phone. Putting down the phone, Li Jie let out a long sigh. Knowing that Li Jie was in a bad mood, Zhou Ziyu took the initiative to hug him. Hubby, it's all my fault, otherwise you wouldn't be like this. Seeing Li Jie like this, Zhou Ziyu felt a little uncomfortable, but the reason why she chose him was not because he was affectionate and responsible. If he really was a cold-natured person, she wouldn't dare choose him. Li Jie calmed down and smiled at her. I've said it before, it's not your fault, it's because I'm too greedy. Things are already like this, and all I can do now is to be nicer to you and Xiao Jiao. This is the only way I can compensate. After saying that, he picked her up in his arms and said, Come on, I'll take you to take a bath. It is often said that people have 7 deadly sins: arrogance, jealousy, anger, sloth, greed, lust, and gluttony. In Li Jie's view, selfishness is the root of everything. Arrogance is because of selfishness, jealousy is because of selfishness, anger is because of selfishness, laziness is because of selfishness, lust is because of selfishness, and gluttony is also because of selfishness. All disputes in the world stem from human selfishness and self-interest. And selfishness and self-interest are the root and driving force of human progress. Compared with the previous life, Li Jie felt that his biggest change was that he had become more selfish. Thanks to the imaginary boss for the 2,100-point reward, thanks to Chse and the high school ascetic for the 500-point reward, thanks to Wanyan 6 for the reward many times, and thanks to Li Shidafu and Wei Weihun for the reward. Thank you for your support.